Welcome back to Real Talk with Nathan Najib. Today I want to have a conversation about how do I predict the New Zealand real estate economy or the economy in general and how it works. I've been in business for about 20 years. I started in 2007, just before the GFC. We've gone as far as 2000. The team had put together the facts and the figures and how this thing called cycle, the real estate cycle or the economical cycle, works. Now, let me explain how this cycle, what are the four seasons in the economy or in real estate. So first one, just like anything in life, these four seasons, you got spring, summer, fall, and winter. In other words, like we used to say, our grandparents used to say, expansion, which is spring, peak, which is the hottest day, contraction, which is fall, and trough, the coldest day, opposite of peak, right? Now, the four seasons expansion, that's when everything is in the growth mode, and it's called spring, right? In spring, which is in seasons. If you go to Hagley Park, you see the blossoms and everything is growing. In spring or expansion, the inflation is at around 2%. The GDP, usually the gross domestic product, between 2 to 3%. The unemployment rate is at 4.5 to 5.5%. And what you call that is a bull market as well, which was probably 2020 and 2021 and March, probably till March 2022. That was, everything was growing. The market is just everything was selling, and the inflation was very low, as well as the interest rate, obviously. That's what got the market going. So that's your season one, expansion or spring. The second one is peak. Peak, or also the hottest day. The hottest day in summer is not in the economical terms. It's not a one day. It's, if we go back to 2021 to 2022, was probably somewhere between September 2021 until March 2022. The market was through the roof, and it was peak of the market. The third one is contraction, when the market comes back down, opposite of expansion. Contraction or fall. In fall, the GDP is below 2%, unemployment rate goes above 6%, the market drops, and potential recession, 6 months plus of downturn in the market. And then after contraction or fall, the next season is winter, obviously, which is trough. And in trough, or you can also call it coldest day in winter, demand and production see growth is starting to stabilize or recover. The unemployment goes down slowly. Markets start recalibrating. We've spoken about this many times in the past, and what we call it also end of recession. Now let me explain to you the real estate cycle. Usually the cycle sometimes it's 2 to 4 years, other times it's 5 to 10 years. Last cycle that we had from trough to the peak, it was an extended one, and what was behind that was the printing of money, lowering of interest rate, and the cycle goes something like this. You would have seen this. Perhaps Grandad might have drawn this for you. So usually the last trough is lower than the next trough. So this cycle here, sometimes it's 2 to 4 years from the trough to peak. Other times it is 5 to 10 years. So this also correlates with our 5 variables and how we predict the market and what is it going to do. Now, I've put some notes together here. The 5 variables is to have a good and healthy market. The 5 variables, which I've explained this in the past, but I want to explain it one more time. The home prices, annual median sale price, it needs to increase between 2 to 4%. The next one is number of annual sales, and then supply of inventory. They go hand in hand. If the demand surpasses the supply, then the prices go through the roof. It doesn't stay at 2 to 4%. But if supply is more and not enough demand, you don't get the 2 to 4% growth. So between 2 to 4% growth is where the government should have the growth in. So that's why if I see so much demand and not enough supply, I'm saying, hey, listen, the market is going to go up. But if I see heaps of supply like I'm seeing now, I say the market is going to stay flat, or even though the demand is a little bit more now, the market may potentially come back because there's that much supply. And the fourth variable is mortgage rate fluctuation. Mortgage rate fluctuation, that needs to be, I think, between 4.5% to 5.5% is a fair interest rate. Now, let me explain to you how the OCR and mortgage rate work. So what they do when the market is tough and nothing is happening, they want to encourage people to start spending money. So in order to do that, they usually drop the interest rate. What I call about the lever that the puppet master play with is that interest rate fluctuation, a mortgage rate fluctuation. So they lower the interest rate and lower the OCR because the people that have got money in the bank, they go and spend it because you don't get enough return in the bank. They go and spend it. Same as mortgage rate. The mortgage rate is low, the credit is low, people go and spend because if my credit card, I'm only getting charged 10%, then I'll go and spend. If my interest rate is 2%, I'm going to go and upgrade my house, upgrade my car, and da-da-da-da. In the other hand, if the market is taken off and it's gone crazy, they always increase the interest rate and increase the OCR. OCR, so people stop spending. If they've got money, a few $100,000, a couple of $1 million, they put it in the bank, they get good return on it. And same as interest rate, they stop spending because the interest rate is high. Remember the interest rate was 7+%. People were like, nah, I'm not buying other houses because the market is just so interest rate is so high, right? And the last one is affordability, which is inflation and unemployment rate. With your inflation, we've spoken about, that must stay under 2%. Why it needs to be under 2%? Because if the price are going up above 2%, increasing year on year, above 2%, and I've got this graph, I want to talk you through it shortly, then things become unaffordable. And usually, the salaries don't increase that much. So if you got inflation at 7% like we did after the pandemic, because they're printing on money, all those things, the inflation was 7+%, a bunch of quarters, that things become unaffordable because people aren't getting that kind of salary rises, right? So if that's the case, then things become unaffordable. Like we have now, it's like, it's like the economical disaster as we call it, right? Like the things are unaffordable, right? So inflation need to be under 2%. The unemployment rate needs to be under 5% for everything to work like clockwork. So what needs to do, these people, the governments that come in, they need to keep everything in check. It's not just one thing, the interest rate. It's not just the inflation. It's the unemployment rate, it's the inflation, it's the mortgage rate fluctuation, it's the supply of inventory, it's the demand, number of annual sales sold, and obviously these things will take care of the annual median sale price, right? Now, the graph, as I said, we've gone back is as far as 2000. I got into business 2007, by the way, just before the GFC. So I got into business in 2007, which was the peak, and things were happening, and then all of a sudden, boom, the cliff. Things came off the cliff. So back in 2000 to 2002, it was Labour was in the government. Helen Clark was there, and the OCR was between 5 to 6%. The inflation was between 2 to 3%. I suggest she came obviously after I'm suggesting National was in government, because what happens is this, and go back and have a look at it. When Labour is in government, it's usually, and I'm not left or right, when it's Labour in the government, because they just give things away, they put regulations in place and they increase taxes, and when they do that, there's disaster in the economy. Every single time, have a look at it. And then when National comes in, they kind of get things under control and get things back right again. They decrease taxes usually. But if you have a look at when Labour was in government or National in the government, my recommendation is it goes up and it goes down. It goes up and it goes down. It can stay pretty healthy if somebody comes in and don't do still their policies and actually just say, hey, I'm going to come in, I'm going to make this economy better for every single person. Not taking care of the poor or the rich. It's like, what can we do to make the New Zealand economy better, right? So going back to 2002 again, the key events, the market was stable. The OCR was at between 5 to 6%. The inflation was between 2 to 3%, and unemployment rate between 5 and 6%. Between 2003 and 2007, the key event, supply and demand, undersupply construction, lag and demand surged. Housing boom. Now, the OCR peaked at 8.27%. And that was 2007. And the reason they increased the official cash rate, because when things go out of kilter, what they do, they need to increase the OCR, the official cash rate, because for the market, when the market gets busy, they need to increase the official cash rate and increase the interest rate, just like I said before, right? That's exactly what they did. So they slowed the market down. But usually what happens, they're too late to increase it, they're always too late to decrease it. They're never on time, unfortunately, because I've talked about this in the past, because they're not people that are on the ground. Like, I see things now. They see it 6 months, 12 months later. So what happened was, so the OCR increased, the inflation increased once again 2 to 4%, because obviously when you drop the interest rate, which they did in early 2000s, when you drop the interest rate, then the inflation increases, right? Because when people start spending, the businesses have to go and hire people, and then that increases demand, right? So it increases demand, decreases the unemployment rate, and increases inflation. And then off the back of that, it was the peak at 2000. Between 2003 and 2007, it just took off what we call expansion. And 2007 was the top, which was the peak. And then off the back of that was what? It was the GFC, the global financial crisis. And that's when we had in government in 2008, 2003 to 2007 was labor, and when they drop the interest rate, and they usually give free stuff away, when they regulate stuff and increase taxes, then what happens off the back of that is a trough, right? So then it was the GFC, and GFC between 2008 and 2009, there was transition between Labour to National again, and they cut the OCR to 2.5. So when the GFC hit, because the market was bad, once again, like I said, bad market, lower interest rate, lower OCR to get the market pumping, right? And then this was where we were in 2007. And then when you increase the interest rate, like they did 2007 over here, then that brings a trough, right? Brings the fall, starts to fall, right? So between 2008 and 2009, once again, I see transition between Labour to National. They cut the interest rate, OCR to 2.5%. The inflation dipped at between 0 to 3%, and the prices is fall post GFC. And then off the back of that, 2010, 2012 was when John Key was in power. The OCR was between 2.5 to 3%. The inflation was between 1 to 3, and then the unemployment obviously increased off the back of GFC because businesses went out of business, and the unemployment increased between 6.5% to 6%. And then obviously, when it's the trough, like I see the stabilization and the recalibration happens, and then from there on, 2013 to 15. And by the way, the 2011 here in Christchurch, when the earthquake happened, off the back of, so 2008 was GFC, 2009, 2010, I know, I remember that because I just got into the business. The market was tough until the earthquake, and then when billions of dollars was pumped back into the Christchurch economy, the market took off once again, in particular here in Christchurch. If you look at the stats for Christchurch, it will be different because everywhere else the market was quiet. Christchurch earthquake, money was pumped in, so the economy started moving here. And between 2016 and 2018, that was when National transitioned to Labour, when Arun came to power, October 2007. And at that time, the OCR was at 1.75%, so they were encouraging people to spend money. And the inflation was between 0.5 and 2%, which was that's pretty good. And the unemployment rate was, when National passed on to Labour, the unemployment rate was pretty good, under 5%, between 4.5 to 4, moved to 4.4. Strong growth started happening, and also the market was pretty steady. And then, God forbid, the COVID happened, 2019 and 2020, and there was a rapid drop. And we've talked about this in the past in our podcasts, in our videos, that what we called was a quick bounce. Like what happens is when there's a natural disaster, if it's the earthquake, if it's a natural disaster like COVID, the market drops because people don't do nothing when there's uncertainty. So the market literally died because Ardern closed the doors and everything. I remember back in the days when we were sitting at home and doing these kind of videos from the house. And that was 2019, 2020, and then on the other hand, when the market peaked, 2021, late to 2020, the market started picking up. 2021, the market was, because a whole lot of money was printed, the interest rate was almost come down to 0. The OCR was 0, almost at 0%. So you wouldn't get any money from the bank if you put your money in the bank. And that money was cheap, so everybody got rich. Plus, they printed up billions and billions of dollars, gave money out. It was like raining money on everybody, and the market went through the roof. 2021, peak of the market once again up here. And then started coming back down, in particular when National came back to the market, to government, they started all this, put stipulation in, took all the overspending, the government that was spending a whole lot of money, like, they took off the railway track in Auckland, as well as the ferry in Wellington, because the market was going absolutely insane. Since then, the market has obviously come back. After the peak, the market in some areas, the market came back up to 30%. But we had a massive growth, right? So now, once again, we're down here in the winter or in trough, and what they're trying to encourage people to start spending money. Now, we've got the interest rate at I fixed one at 4.71%, and the OCR is down to 3%. So like I said before, when they're dropping the interest rate, they want people to start spending money. When they're dropping the OCR, they don't want the wealthy people to have their money in the bank. They want them to take it out of the bank and start putting it in the market. So that's what they're trying to do. That gives me an idea that we are down here in the trough. But remember this, trough doesn't become expansion right away. It takes time for things to recover. That usually between 12 to 24 months. And we've seen the bottom of the market before we start recovering would be first quarter of 2026, and then recovery starts. And when the recovery starts after the hard times, the market comes back to what I call a good, healthy growth between 2 to 4% increase in the market. Now, I hope this has been of help to you. Watch this again and again and again, because one time it won't make sense. Go back and watch last time we did our prediction. I think it was end of last year we did a prediction once again, and we talked about these 5 variables and how they affect the market. Read those, and then you probably won't need no economist explaining to you what's going to happen. You won't panic when things will happen. And just to go back here to this cycles, that cycle has been happening from the start of times, like forever and ever and ever. And that's going to keep happening. So if you look at these cycles, look at the 5 variables and see how they correlate with each other, then you can do your own prediction. You can know your own market. And once again, we're always here to help. If you need any advice or help with real estate, we're always here at your service. This has been Real Talk. I hope it's been of help to you.